It's time to pay attention to Florida State basketball. Head coach Leonard Hamilton has almost single-handedly made FSU relevant in a sport where they have little history of success. There are a few things that mark a Leonard Hamilton coached team, the two biggest being their height and their tendency to heavily rotate through players. Hamilton will often put 10 or 11 players on the court over the course of a game. His philosophy being that some teams' top 5 might be more talented than his, but no one has a better top 10. Now those 10 to 11 that play are usually pretty tall. According to KenPom, a basketball statistics site any college basketball fan should be familiar with, Florida State has been a top 5 team in average player height 9 of the past 12 years, finishing first in 3 of those years. He uses that height to bolster a physically imposing defense that runs a scheme that's decently unique to college basketball. But basketball is a game of give and takes. The focus on defense means less time and resources is given to producing top-notch offenses. This culminated in the most stereotypical Leonard Hamilton team of all time in 2011, where they were number 1 in defense in the country by a significant margin and the 147th best offense in the country. Needless to say, a little balance was needed. So Hamilton went to work, but nothing happens overnight. He invested more heavily in offensive playmakers, which resulted in a marginal decline in defensive performance at first. But thanks to some dynamite recruiting and some much needed patience by the FSU administration, he has achieved that much needed balance, and now he has a program that is a force to be reckoned with on both sides of the court. Let's take a look at what they do and some of the pieces that make it happen. In the spirit of Leonard Hamilton, it only makes sense to start on defense, which, conveniently enough, can be summed up in one word: aggressive. Hamilton's defenses are usually anchored by a 7-footer playing center. They patrol the paint and protect the rim. Look for sophomore Balsa Koprivica and transfer Tanor Ngom to make an impact here. Because they trust their big man to defend the basket, it allows them to be a bit more aggressive on the perimeter. When looking at a defense, one of the first things they consider is how they play their man when he doesn't have the ball. FSU plays what's called denial defense. That means they get in between their man and the ball, and try to deny the offense from getting the ball to their man. This of course can lead to backdoor cuts, but more times than not, FSU's length makes those less than proof. Naturally, when you cut off passing lanes, it can lead to steals and transition opportunities. But it can leave defenders on an island and make it difficult to get help off ball. Here Virginia's quick point guard, Kihei Clark, is isolated on MJ Walker. Since the other defenders are so concerned with denying off ball, Walker gets little help and Clark is able to get to the basket. Something else to look for in any defense is how they play screens. For both on-ball and off-ball screens, FSU tends to switch, meaning they trade off who they are defending. If you can get away with this, it's a pretty foolproof way of blowing up any action and often stalls offenses. Since their players are all relatively tall and athletic, FSU feels pretty comfortable with the potential mismatches. But teams will still try to take advantage. Here Louisville uses a ball screen to switch Florida State's point guard onto their center for a mismatch down low. And again, the help is slow to come due to FSU's denial principles. They play three-pointers aggressively as well. They're taught to fly by on three-point attempts, instead of traditional closeouts where you slow down and chop your feet. Instead, they sprint to the perimeter and try to disrupt the shot attempt, with the main goal of discouraging spot-up shooters by making them reposition their feet. In addition to their half-court aggressiveness, Florida State is one of the last bastions of full-court press basketball. The obvious outcome of press defense is that it speeds up the offense and tends to force mistakes. But in reality, the true goal is to slow down the offenses. Teams only have 30 seconds to shoot, so every second matters. Here FSU forces a rare 10-second violation with their press. This is the true pinnacle of press defense. However, like with anything, there are always drawbacks. So that's enough for the defense today, let's move on to offense. Their base offense is a motion offense, which implies they're following loose guidelines instead of more strict plays more often than not. The offense usually starts with a point guard, pressing forward to expose any players who haven't gotten back in time. The offense then proceeds with a series of cuts to the basket that return back or fill to the three-point line. These actions are usually interspersed with picks by the big man and attempts to take advantage of any opportunities to get the ball in the paint. One thing I've liked recently about their pick and roll game is they like to do this thing called a pick and pop. Sometimes Hamilton went with more of a small ball lineup featuring Malik Osborne at the center. This allowed him to do what's called a pick and pop. where he sets a screen and pops out to the three-point line for an open three. Florida State wants to get to the paint. A common method they use to do that is by using dribble handoffs. This gets the defense moving side to side and makes it harder for teams to help off ball. Once in the paint, they can use their length to get good looks at the rim, or they can pass it out for three-point opportunities. Anthony Polite and Wyatt Wilkes look to be two of your most potent outside threats this year. However, teams know that FSU's goal is to get their size into the paint, so often they'll play a conservative help defense to try to discourage penetration. When their offense is failing to take advantage of these open looks at the three-point line is when FSU can tend to get into trouble. It helps to have playmakers that can lift them out of these slumps. Last year, Devin Vassell, MJ Walker, and Patrick Williams were those go-to guys. Unfortunately for the Noles, two of those guys were lost to the draft, so they'll need MJ Walker, who clearly has a talent, to step up and find some more consistency. He might get some help with JUCO transfer Sardaar Calhoun, who might have been one of the best JUCOs in the country. To get these guys good looks, they like going to what's called runner action. This is simply an action where the runner gets two screens set for him along the baseline. He takes off and tries to pick off his defender and pop onto the three-point line with space. This can be adjusted as well. If the defense is cheating outside a bit, they can curl it back towards the basket. But ultimately, FSU wants to produce open lanes to the rim. Forward Raquan Gray has been improving in this area and likes to show off his surprising athleticism with the ball in his hands. But he still needs to work on his touch a bit when he gets those looks. Where FSU's offense is most potent, however, is in the transition game. They love to run the court after steals, rebounds, and even made shots. The person who was often given the reins over these opportunities was point guard Trent Forrest, who, in addition to being a great leader, was a master at manipulating defenders and sliding his way towards the basket. His presence will be missed, but some of the slack might be picked up by Raquan Evans. And some of it might be picked up by 6'9" freshman point guard Scottie Barnes, who has shown a similar craftiness in the paint, with an added extra few inches to his frame. Now, this team is going to be nationally competitive this year, but Leonard Hamilton has built more than a basketball team. He has built a program, one that is known not only by its results on the court, but by the men it has produced off the court. He has convinced elite players like Scottie Barnes, Jonathan Isaac, Patrick Williams, and many others to spend their time in Tallahassee sharing playing time. This is a program that deserves our respect, and it's high time that we give it. Thanks for watching this video. If you want more information on the different personnel Florida State likes to use, check out the article I put in the description, written by Michael Rogner. They have a great podcast with him and Matt Minnick where they talk all things FSU basketball. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I convinced one fan to start watching FSU basketball. Thanks.